Hello and welcome to the program. I am Suren. During the last episode, we have asked a question. Was the God of Genesis an astronaut? We are made aware of a Frenchman, Jean Saint-Dié, who has written several books during the 1960s, where he proposes the theory that the deity of Genesis was a team of astronauts. However, he also feels that it fits the biblical evidence better than any other idea, according to scientist A.V. Clarke. As he exclaims that the scholars of theology would normally agree that the Hebrew word for God, who is said to have created heaven and earth in Genesis, chapter 1, verse 1, was Elohim, which is a plural word. But Saint-Dié considered it more literally and claiming that it meant not only one God, but several gods. There are other words for God, such as Adonai and Yahweh, which is a singular word describing the individuals in this supposed team of astronauts. According to this scientist, the deities or gods came in a spacefaring craft, which was approximately 18 square miles large, after a journey undertaken of about 6,000 years, during which time the original folk, approximately 15 couples, were replaced by their descendants, who continued the journey. Since these new astronauts had lived their lives in a weightless environment, he considers that they stopped of Phobos and Deimos, the moons of planet Mars, to become gradually accustomed to gravity, of course, before landing on planet Earth, or Terra, or Terras. They probably had to clear a path through the clouds surrounding the Earth during the windy, waterless darkness of the last ice age, when conditions may have been more like those on Mars or even planet Venus. During their stay on the planet Earth, he thinks that the astronauts behaved exactly as all other astronauts that we came to know about would do. In fact, or as it was shown in history, speculating that they fenced off an habitable area, which may have been called the Garden of Eden, as in the Bible. In this paradise type of environment, they created a very technological society therein, measuring time as day and night and using cosmic calculations, which have mysteriously been part of ancient knowledge ever since. He proposes that they created rivers, irrigated land, domesticated animals, and established agriculture, very similarly to Mesopotamians and Sumerians, pointing precisely to what may have happened in Egypt during the times when on the planet Earth. These ancient astronauts may have selected certain men as their assistants or apprentices, teaching them many new mysteries for certain, among which may have been the secret of levitation, and which naturally allowed them to accomplish great feats of building pyramids and other monuments. These astronauts may have selected one man, naming him as Adam, or Adam, who had learned quickly and probably a little too much, or learned how to do certain things which were too dangerous for him to handle. Adam, they are taught, and probably by yet another astronaut named Satan, or Lucifer, who wanted Adam to know not too much. Then, to prevent Adam from doing great damage, or learning how he would be immortal, he was expelled from the fenced area, but at the least he knew how to farm and domesticate animals. With this information, civilization made great strides in the Nile Valley. Sandy considers the extraterrestrial beings recreated out of the dust of the caves in which the natives had lived, a new civilization. Since these cave dwellers were completely ignorant of reproductive processes, Sandy considered that they would have expressed a woman as being created out of a particular limb of Adam's body. But that is a different story. After several millennia, those gods or astronauts left the planet Earth. According to the Sandy's theory, because their research had been completed, whilst also their ships needed refueling, or for some other unknown reason. It may be that the astronauts knew that men could not be advanced sufficiently enough to continue their contact with him. But possibly in another 10,000 years, they could establish a renewed contact. But before leaving, they may have completely obliterated their base, and as particularly if it were in the Nile Valley, or they may have destroyed it intentionally or unintentionally by some other method we cannot imagine. It seems they may have destroyed even the people as well, whom they had been educating for a while, except Noah, because all but Noah were apparently misusing their advanced knowledge to enjoy the sins of the flesh. We don't know, but that is what Sandy says. These educated natives may have been tampering with genetics in their offspring to produce giants, geniuses, and other unusual men, and probably freaks. The astronauts saw that much damage was already being done and decided to destroy all their undertakings, but alas, harming their students as well, except for Noah and his family. But after the flood, Sandy maintains that Noah, or Utnapishtim, wanted to continue contact with his own spaceship, and he is said to have built an altar, or even perhaps a receiving set. Several years later, the descendants tried to improve upon the receiving set by building a tower antenna. But the messages they received were confusing to them, and so they abandoned their venture. Sounds logical, in a sense. And Sandy thinks that Noah received the final message from departing beings, who told him that they would place a sign of the covenant in the clouds. Using his space-age logic, Sandy assumed that the location of such a sign would be on the moon, and he predicted that NASA would find some such message about the ancient prediction from our ancient visitors. He thought that the message would be in a negative mass concentration found by Orbiter 5, a giant hollow which could have been a site for their original lunar base. Sandy called it negative mass concentration, and it was nothing more than large craters so far on the moon. And NASA has found no messages so far except those of nature from examining the rocks and the terrain. However, there may be more newer discoveries we are not yet being enlightened about. But that message may still be there for our future astronauts, or maybe in the form of knowledge gained through ESP. We need to remember that astronaut Ed Mitchell performed an ESP experiment on Apollo 14 and obtained remarkable results. Psychokinesis, or psychokinetic message in space. That is a subject of intrigue. Now, levitation experiment may yield unusual results in space where in nature's inherent force could easily move an object. NASA and or any other government agency recognizes parapsychology as a subject for scientific research. The experiment would have to be conducted by an astronaut or several astronauts as personal endeavors, like Ed Mitchell's experiment. And if the experiment proved a success, as with astronaut Mitchell's experiment, we may have received the other message from above the clouds. The type of message of advanced kind which would have been left for us should be one which requires more than just average intelligence to understand. Maybe the message or the sign in the clouds is something which we shall discover in space. Not a placard stating that we had visitors, but a discovery of how to use the powers which they utilized while visiting us thousands of years ago. Or that cloud could be a digital one, commonly known in our days now. In quest to determine whether life is unique to planet Earth alone or a common occurrence throughout the universe, research institutions, including NASA, have been examining many objects obtained from space for evidence of life. For example, NASA has carefully examined the rocks brought back from the moon, searching for any signs of life, but none has been so far detected. Even under microscope, I couldn't see anything towards that when I had the dust from moon. The scientists, however, have discovered a strange phenomenon which has not yet been explained. And I am not going to include that in here because it is not explained. When moon dust, which is not soluble in water, is sprinkled around growing plants, they grew much better as if they had been fertilized, even though none of the dust could have nourished the plants, since plants can only utilize food in liquid form. Either plants can use the dust in some unknown biological manner, or they are responding to the special attention they receive. We cannot be too sure. Plants grow better if loved dearly and given special attention. This has been demonstrated many times over, particularly by Cleve Baxter. That's a different subject we will discuss later. Not knowing what forms of life may be found in space, NASA quarantined the first 4 Apollo crew members returning from the moon. NASA considered the possibility of a new life on the moon which could have been carried back with the astronauts. Possibly, such life, which would be alien to planet Earth, could have developed rapidly, causing a fantastic catastrophe. But no life was found. Therefore, Apollo 15 and subsequent crews were not quarantined. In short, it is understood that dust from the moon caused plants to grow rapidly as if the dust, that's moon dust, which was insoluble in water, were a fertilizer. We can therefore claim that the research for life in space was reasonably successful. NASA has been searching for life from space in the meteors, which blazed a fire trail through our atmosphere and buried themselves in the Earth or in our oceans. NASA scientists have reported that they have found chemicals of apparent extraterrestrial origin, which are the newest evidence that life exists elsewhere in the universe. The scientists reporting the discovery today, 162nd National Congress of the American Chemical Society in September 1971, for example, was Dr. Cyril Ponampiruma. This doctor and a team of other scientists have found strange chemicals from Orgueil meteorite, which fell in France in 1864. That is history. They were aware that this meteorite was itself the source of well-known hoaxes played by practical jokers who inserted organic material into the space rock. They found some of the old planted chemicals, but they also discovered 6 amino acids and 8 types of primal chemicals, surmising that both groups of chemicals had originated somewhere in the mysterious recesses of space then. There are more tests and experiments today. This group of scientists working at the Ames Research Center of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration in Mountain View, California, had already found twice before of life-related chemicals in meteorites, the remnants of shooting stars. These space visitors were believed to have originated in the belt of asteroids which are in an orbital path outside the Mars or Martian orbit. that is old as the solar system, about 4 and 7 billion years. The NASA scientists reported that the chemicals they discovered were pyrimidine, similar to the life molecule, which is one of the principal building block molecules of the DNA in genetic code chain, the building block of virtually all living organisms on Earth at least. They said that the chemicals found in the 3 meteorites were so similar to, but not exactly like the chemicals found in living organisms on Earth. But these space-traveling chemicals could easily be considered as constituents of an extraterrestrial life form. Based upon physical laws, which can be observed far into the mysterious steps of space and being everywhere, the same chemicals which constitute life systems being found in meteorites. Stories of gods or deities visiting the Earth, UFO sightings, which is real, contact with the spirit world, which is also real, and other factors, there is strong evidence that advanced life systems should have visited the Earth long time ago, leaving their secrets of psychokinesis along with many other fantastic powers. With powers of psychokinesis and knowledge gained from extraterrestrial beings, the Egyptian pyramids would not seem to be such an impossible task for the ancient race. With psychokinesis, no masonry would have been required to mine, move, and lift the gigantic stones into place. Just think about it. Egyptian civilization played a very important and crucial part in the rise of Christianity. It was in Egypt that Moses, the Hebrew lawgiver, gained his education in the courts of the powerful, fearsome Pharaoh. Well, they were somewhat related anyway. Moses heard a voice from a burning bush, which could have been controlled by the psychokinesis of extraterrestrial beings. He had been given power to bring many plagues upon the less fortunate Egyptians. So the story goes. He was protected and guided by a cloud-like vehicle, which produced a column of light at night for supposedly 40 years in the nearest vicinity of Egypt. He talked many times with being who was not of this world. And when Moses was old, he did not die as a normal man, but an extraterrestrial being said to him that he would take care of his body. Moses was seen hundreds of years later beneath a large vehicle or cloud from which an unworldly, booming voice was heard, proclaiming that the extraterrestrial being called Jesus or Sananda was a member of the universal race. From the Bible stories, we recognize that extraterrestrial beings who had psychokinetic powers were very active in and around Egypt for thousands of years. And elsewhere too, such as Sumeria and Mesopotamia. If an extraterrestrial race wanted to leave a time capsule for us, what would be better than a pyramid? That's a good question. Why did the Egyptians save the life of an extraterrestrial being when he was a human's biological baby? As the story goes, Joseph fled into Egypt with Mary and baby Jesus to save Jesus from being slain by King Herod. They were in Egypt for 2 years or more during Jesus' youth. What happened while Jesus was in Egypt? Question mark. Did he have any contact while there with other extraterrestrial beings? Why was Jesus' body stored in, which approximated to the pyramids built to gain immortality, for the Pharaoh? Another question. Jesus, or Sananda, was immortal. The stone was rolled away by an extraterrestrial being, and Jesus left the earth in a cloud vehicle, just like the one that be near Egypt with Moses for many years. What Egyptian myths tell was possible by mummifying a body and wrapping it in cloth. The Bible tells how Jesus' body was anointed with spices wrapped in cloth and placed in a tomb. Jesus proved to be immortal. Egyptians were told how to be immortal and how God would return to earth. When Edgar Cayce, the famous sleeping prophet, was asked, while in a trance, how was this particular great pyramid of Giza built? He replied, by use of those forces in nature has made for iron to swim, stone float in the air in the same manner. This will be discovered in 58 on July 1, 1932. Was it? In 1960, A.V. Clarke, the scientist, proposed the theory of intellectually controlled molecular motion, which was a possible explanation for moving of objects with the mind. But as of now, there has been no accepted discovery or how stones could float in the air or the iron swims in the waters. Such a discovery could have been made in 1958 without the scientific community being aware of it. We don't know. The extraterrestrial beings who performed psychokinesis feeds thought to men how to gain psychokinetic powers. Many humans have mastered the requirements to control matter with their minds. And apparently, everyone who follows those instructions can also gain psychokinetic powers. Those instructions will be given in a later time. But it should be understood by the listeners, viewers, and readers that the author does not and cannot guarantee success, since the purpose of this is to persuade listeners or readers and watchers to try the recommended techniques and inform the author of the results. So the scientist A.V. Clarke hoped. Consider the exercises for improving mind control over matter as experiments to substantiate or disprove a theory of a scientist who spent many years researching in the psychic field. Ideas of how the ancient, mysterious Egyptian pyramids they have been built using levitation has presented evidence to support the theory that extraterrestrial beings have used psychokinesis on Earth and have taught men how to use psychokinesis. We will consider a few scientific theories and realities by the next programs. In the meantime, keep smiling and be happy. We will meet here again by the next episode. Thank you.